On a cold, rainy afternoon, I offered a ride to a lonely old woman waiting at a bus stop. Later, I discovered she had left her purse in my car, but instead of money or ID, it held only one old-fashioned house key and a sealed letter written in my late grandmother's handwriting. Before we dive in, let me know what city you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe for more daily stories. Now, let's step out into the rain. Grief has its own landscape. For the past year, since my grandmother Clara passed away, my world had shrunk to the small, damp corners of my two-bedroom apartment. Life was a mix of overdue bills, second-hand furniture, and the constant low hum of anxiety that comes from being a single mother trying to stay afloat. But the heart of my grief lived elsewhere. That memory was my grandmother's house, a beautiful old Victorian, surrounded by a garden she had tended with love and patience. I spent every childhood summer there. It was the only place that had ever truly felt like home. And now I remember the day I lost it, with painful clarity. A week after her funeral, my Uncle David, my mother's brother, invited me to his perfect home and sat me down at his polished mahogany table. His face carried a practiced look of sympathy. "I'm so sorry, Sarah," he said, sliding a thin envelope toward me. "I went through Clara's finances. It's not good." He explained that my grandmother had a second mortgage I never knew about, along with piles of debt. After paying it all off, there was almost nothing left. "We had to sell the house," he added, tapping the envelope. "This is all that remained." Too numb with grief to question him, I took the check, a pathetic, insulting amount, and accepted his explanation. I believed the home I loved most had been sold to strangers to cover debts my grandmother had supposedly left behind. A year later, on a gray Tuesday, the rain fell in relentless sheets. I was driving home from my waitressing job, my old car sputtering in protest. Exhausted and broke, I was on my way to pick up my son from daycare, a daycare I could barely afford. At a red light, I saw her. An elderly woman stood alone at a bus stop with no shelter. The rain had soaked her thin gray hair, and her paper grocery bags were falling apart in her hands. She looked frail but dignified, completely drenched, yet calm. My first instinct was selfish, to keep driving. I was late, my car was a mess, and I didn't need more problems. But then I saw her face. The quiet strength in her tired eyes reminded me so much of my grandmother. With a resigned sigh, I pulled over. Rolling down the window, I called out, "Ma'am, please get in. You'll catch your death out here. Let me give you a ride." She hesitated for a moment in the downpour, then nodded with a grateful smile. "If you're sure, dear, I wouldn't want to trouble you." "No trouble at all," I lied, even as I mentally calculated the extra time and gas money I didn't have. I helped her and her disintegrating bags into the car. The shabby interior, my son's car seat, scattered toys, suddenly felt embarrassingly small in her presence. "My name is Evelyn," she said as we drove off. "Sarah?" I replied. "Nice to meet you, Evelyn." The drive was quiet, calm, and oddly comforting. The rain drummed softly against the roof, and Evelyn began asking gentle questions about my son, my job, my life. She had a warm, curious way of listening that made me feel seen for the first time in a long while. Eventually, I found myself telling her about my grandmother Clara, the house with the rose garden that had been my sanctuary. I explained how my uncle had handled the estate, claiming she'd been in debt and that selling the house was the only choice. Evelyn listened closely, hands folded neatly in her lap, her expression unreadable yet deeply kind. "Your grandmother sounds like she was remarkable," she said quietly, "and very clever. It's a tragedy what became of her home." There was something peculiar in the way she emphasized the word tragedy, though I couldn't quite grasp why. When we reached her apartment, a modest, well-kept building for seniors, I insisted on helping her carry her groceries to the door. "You have such a kind heart, dear," she said, smiling. "Just like your grandmother, Clara." Hearing my grandmother's name so naturally spoken sent a chill through me. "You knew her?" I asked, surprised. A wistful smile touched Evelyn's lips. "Everyone knew Clara," she said softly. "She was a force of nature." She thanked me again and disappeared into her apartment, leaving me standing in the quiet hallway. It wasn't until I picked up my son and returned home that I noticed something resting on the passenger seat. A small, elegant object that looked wildly out of place in my cluttered car. Evelyn's purse, a dark blue velvet clutch, antique-looking and delicate. I sighed. Her place was across town. Returning it would have to wait until tomorrow, but I knew the old woman would be worried. I decided to open it, hoping to find an ID or phone number so I could contact her and let her know it was safe. I unclasped the small silver latch. The purse was lined with faded silk and nearly empty. There was no wallet, no phone, no identification. Only one thing, a heavy, old-fashioned brass key, the kind that belonged to an old solid door. Beside it lay a thick, cream-colored envelope, sealed with wax. My breath caught. It wasn't addressed to Evelyn. It was addressed to me, Sarah. And the handwriting, it was my grandmother's, Clara's beautiful, graceful script, written by a hand I thought I'd never see again. My heart pounded as I stared at the letter. It couldn't be real. My grandmother had been gone for over a year. But here it was, tangible and unmistakable. My hands trembled as I broke the wax seal. I wasn't just opening a letter. I was opening a secret, a time capsule, the last gift my grandmother had left for me from beyond the grave. Inside, on thick, old paper, the letter began. My dearest, dearest Sarah, if you're reading this, I am gone, and the world is dimmer without you in it. But you, my brave, kind, and underestimated granddaughter, are the reason for this letter. This is both a warning and a gift, a final plan from me to you. I paused, eyes blurring with tears. I know your heart, and I know the heart of my son, your Uncle David. He is not evil, but he is weak. All his life, he has been tempted by the easy lure of money, and I fear that after I'm gone, his greed will drive him to do something deeply unfair to you. My blood ran cold. It was as if she were watching the past year unfold from beyond the grave. He will tell you I had debts, the letter continued. He will claim he sold my home to settle them. He will hand you a small, insulting check and insist it's all that remains. My darling Sarah, that is a lie. A single tear of anger dropped onto the page. I have no debts. My home is fully paid for. It's my most precious possession, but I cannot leave it to him. He would sell it in an instant and waste the money. Nor can I leave it directly to you, for he would pressure you into giving him control. So, I have done something unconventional, a final move in our family's game. I have transferred ownership of the house, in complete secrecy and with legal protection, to the one person I trust as much as I trust you, my oldest and dearest friend, Evelyn. I froze. Evelyn, the kind, drenched old woman I had picked up at the bus stop. I instructed her to meet you, not as my friend, but as a stranger, to see who you've become, to test your kindness and strength. If she found that the compassionate girl I raised still lived within you, she was to give you this letter and this key. I looked down at the brass key resting in my lap, the key to the house I thought I'd lost forever. The chance meeting in the rain, Evelyn's gentle questions, her knowing expressions, they hadn't been coincidence. They had been part of my grandmother's plan, a quiet, thoughtful test of my character. My uncle hadn't just mismanaged the estate. He had lied, deliberately and cruelly, stealing the home that rightfully belonged to me. The grief that had weighed on me for a year began to lift, replaced by a cold, righteous determination. My grandmother had not only left me a house, she had left me a mission and an ally in her loyal friend Evelyn. The shadow of my uncle's deceit had hung over my life long enough. It was time to bring the truth to light. I gripped the cold brass key and made my decision. My first act would not be revenge. It would be reclamation. I started my car and drove through the rain, through the city, to the quiet tree-lined street I hadn't dared visit since the funeral. There it was, my grandmother's house, proud, overgrown, and beautiful. The roses she had tended were wild but still thriving. The old porch swing swayed gently in the afternoon breeze. It looked frozen in time, exactly as I remembered. My heart raced as I walked up the path. I slid the heavy key into the lock. It turned with a soft, familiar click. Inside, the air smelled like lavender, old books, and faint apple pie. The scent of home. I wandered through the silent rooms, touching the dust-covered furniture, the chair she used to read in, the kitchen where she'd taught me to bake, and I wept, not from sorrow, but from the indescribable joy of returning. Standing in the middle of the living room, surrounded by her memory, I pulled out my phone and dialed his number. David answered on the second ring, his tone impatient as ever. "Sarah, what is it? I'm in a meeting." "I'm sure you are," I said evenly, my voice calm but firm, one he didn't recognize. "I just have a quick question for you, David, about Grandma Clara's house." He sighed, already dismissive. "Sarah, we've been through this. The house was sold to pay off her debts. It's gone. That's the end of it. You need to learn to move on," he said. "That's funny," I replied, a calm, cold smile spreading across my face as I looked around the sunlit room I stood in. For a house that was supposedly sold a year ago, it's in remarkably good condition. The silence that followed was perfect, a heavy, telling quiet filled with panic. I could almost hear his mind scrambling for an excuse that didn't exist. What are you talking about? How did you get in there? That's breaking and entering. No, it's not, I said evenly. It's called using a key given to me by the rightful owner of this property. I let the words linger before continuing. You lied to me, David. There were no debts. The house was never sold. Grandma was, as you've always known, a far wiser and more decent person than you'll ever be. She left it to someone she trusted. His voice sharpened. Who has it? A wonderful woman named Evelyn, I said. Grandma's oldest and most loyal friend, a woman with a very kind heart. I walked to the front window, glancing out at the quiet street. I have to go now, David. I'm meeting Evelyn and our lawyer shortly to finalize the deed transfer as per Grandma's clear wishes. Oh, and you'll probably hear from my lawyer tomorrow. There's a small legal issue regarding the inheritance you stole. I hung up. Silence filled the living room, warm and peaceful. The echo of my uncle's sputtering voice faded, leaving only sunlight and calm. The lie was dead, and for the first time in a year, I was truly home. An hour later, a car pulled into the driveway. Evelyn stepped out, graceful, composed, and smiling. She wasn't just a stranger anymore. She was my grandmother's confidant, and now my ally. She carried a bottle of champagne and 2 glasses. Your grandmother, she said with a spark in her eyes, always loved a well-executed plan. I'd say this deserves a celebration. We sat together on Grandma's old sofa, the same one where I had spent countless afternoons listening to her stories. Evelyn began to share her own. She told me about her 60-year friendship with my grandmother, a bond forged in a world that didn't always appreciate strong, intelligent women. She spoke of Grandma's unwavering love for me and her heartbreak over David's greed. She saw this coming, Evelyn said softly. She knew he'd see you as competition, not family. She was determined to protect you and this house from his worst impulses. Evelyn then handed me a thick folder filled with documents, the deed, legal papers, and Grandma's final instructions. She hadn't just left me a home. She'd left me a fortress, secure, untouchable, and protected from every angle. As expected, the fallout was quick and predictable. My uncle tried to fight back. He called lawyers, made accusations, and claimed that Evelyn and I had manipulated an old woman, but his efforts collapsed under the weight of Grandma's airtight plan. Legally defeated and financially broken, he lost everything, his greed costing him not just money, but the last of his family's respect. My satisfaction didn't come from his downfall, though. It came from rebuilding. 3 months later, on a warm Saturday afternoon, I stood in my grandmother's garden. The rose bushes were thriving again under my care, their bright blooms a symbol of renewal. My son laughed nearby, chasing a butterfly across the green lawn. Evelyn sat beside me on the porch swing. She had become more than a friend. She was family now. My grandmother, in her infinite wisdom, hadn't just left me property. She'd given me a new guardian, a second grandmother, and a living link to her love. We sipped iced tea and talked about simple things. What color to paint the kitchen, what vegetables to plant next spring. It was ordinary, peaceful, and beautiful. The quiet work of building a new life. I had entered that storm as a lost, struggling woman, but a small act of kindness toward a stranger had led me home. My grandmother hadn't only given me a key to a house, she had given me the key to my own future, and I was finally ready to open that door. An inspiring story of a grandmother's brilliance and a granddaughter's resilience. What do you think of the grandmother's plan and her secret test? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story moved you, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more powerful and heartwarming stories. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.